Unfortunately, I'd forgotten that. I contacted him that next time. So luckily, I was asking him to do a different presentation. So we're going to benefit twice this year from Martin's presentations. He says he's got some props here. It's the pickaxe handle that worries me, along with the open razors, but I'm sure all will be revealed. Anyway, Martin Rowley, he's come all the way from Dronfield, so it's pantomime season early. And so he's going to talk to us tonight about Sheffield's gang wars, the greatest story never told. Martin, over to you.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you very much for welcoming me here this evening. I'm going to talk to you this evening about the Sheffield gang wars. Have we got any Sheffielders in here? Okay, a couple of three people. Rest of you are incomers. So you may not know the story. It's the greatest story never told. It's how Sheffield was run by organised crime gangs in the 1920s. And Sheffield was nicknamed Little Chicago, and you'll see why by the end of my talk. First of all, a health and safety warning. This presentation contains violent, exciting, controversial and political comments. If it's not for you, leave now. Otherwise, please enjoy part of Sheffield's history that you probably didn't know about, or maybe knew a little about. So, why are you here? And what's my expertise? I am not even a Sheffielder. I'm a Mancunian. And I've lived here 54 years in this area, and I'm just about accepted now. So what we learned today, a little bit about Sheffield's history, a little bit about the film industry in Sheffield, which you possibly don't know that much about, and a little bit about Sheffield's historic buildings. Now, history, this is important. You must take this fact away with you. In 1920, Sheffield as a city ate more bananas than any other city in Europe. Now, a lady came up to me at a WI meeting about 18 months ago, and she said, I said, that's a load of rubber. Went back and checked. There is a banana index in the world, and Sheffield is still way up there. Don't ask me why. Any questions as we go through today? We'll have a question and answer session at the end, but if you want anything desperate as I go through, stop and ask me. I've got 4 children. I'm used to being interrupted. You can see 2 of them are mine. They've got my nose. Just to show you that criminal activities, extortion and blackmail have been available and they're still available in every town and family in the UK. My eldest daughter, the one on the left, wants £1 every time I show that old slide. When I went through the door on Christmas Day, she said, I think it was 97 quid, wasn't it, Dad? Who needs daughters? I'm not going to talk about organised crime that much, but there are currently 5,000 organised crime gangs in the UK today. £100,000 million was laundered last year in this country by organised crime. London has 200 gangs, mainly of Albanian mafia. Sheffield, South Yorkshire, Derbyshire, only 19. Now you're thinking that's a lot. We are a very low crime area. So what's the background to crime? Greed, treachery, theft, corruption, intimidation and violence. And you'll find all of that was in the Sheffield gang wars in the 1920s. Now, let's start off with the film industry in South Yorkshire. It currently employs nearly 2,500 people full-time. Now, over the last 3 years was £64 million spent in this area. Bakewell, Chesterfield, Rotherham, Barnsley, etc. And 23 million last year. The number of full feature films made is 27. You only probably remember one. And the current films in production are 12, even as we speak. Sheffield also is the centre of the world for documentaries. We have a 2-week film fest called DocFest. Just finished 3 weeks ago. It's the place people come to make documentaries. Now, you probably don't recognise my face, but I'm a film star. This was a film I was in about 18 months ago. It was called The Palace, and it was shot in Sheffield, Chesterfield area, and at Wentworth Woodhouse, which was closed for 2 weeks of filming. And it was a Roman Polanski film, the guy on the right-hand side here, international film director. Now, I had to stand in a room for 3 hours and not say a word. At Wentworth Woodhouse, very difficult for me. This guy, I mean, who's ever heard of John Cleese? He was in the film as well. And he got a bigger check than me, I guess, and a bigger billing. So how did I get involved in films and the Sheffield gang war? I went to school with this guy. This is Jeff Leesley. We share the same birthday. He's now a writer. He is a Royal Shakespeare player, etc. And his claim to fame is he's been in 5 soaps in the, I just moved that cursor out of the way, 5 soaps in the television, and they've all closed. Actually, Bergerac is now back. So he's quite well known in the film industry. He's been. This is a shot from can't remember the film he was in with Hugh Grant at one time. And he said, "Look, Martin, it's our birthday, 3rd of June. Can you do us a favour and do some research?" I said, "Yeah, sure, Jeff. What do you want me to do?" He says, "I'd like to do some research on the Sheffield gangs." I said, "Don't know what you're talking about." "I'll send you the book," he said. And he sent me this book. This book is now in its 28th reprint. Very popular book in the Sheffield surrounding areas. A lot of historic information about how Sheffield was run in the 20s by a man called J.P. Bean, not his real name. His name was Julian Broadhead. And I actually had the good fortune to have his sister in a WI meeting about 4 months ago. Really lovely lady, and we shared some ideas. It was a super fellow. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. He also sent me this video from the BBC in 1984 on the Sheffield gang wars. And he said, "Martin, you need to get this back to the BBC within 2 weeks." That was 2007. And I've just been a bit busy since then. Yeah. I will get round to it, but they probably haven't got any video players left at the BBC. And now there is another book, Sheffield 1925, written by a retired history teacher, John Stocks, lives in Norton in Sheffield. Bit thicker, a lot more information in it, more names and more misdeeds, etc. Now, when you think about gangs, this is what most people think about. Al Capone, Tommy guns, running illicit booze over the state line. But as you well know, in the UK, we had our own gangs of organised crime. Anybody know these characters? The Cray twins and their brother Charles. Charles reckoned he had nothing to do with crime, but he would say that. The Sheffield had its own gangs, the Mooney Gang and the Park Brigade. These are some of their police photographs from the archives. Nasty looking bunch of guys. This was the only existing photograph of the Mooney Gang. That's George Mooney on the right-hand side, big 6'5" Irishman. This was in police archives, the only photograph that was in police archives. They were a bit camera shy. And a lady came up to me at a Townswomen's Guild meeting in Chapeltown, I think it was, and she said, "Oh, my granddad was in the gangs." I said, "Was he?" "Oh, I went to jail for 3 years." "Really?" And she showed me all sorts of artifacts, and she gave me these photographs. And this is this lady's granddad, and that is this lady's mother, who is still alive today. Doesn't look like a gang member, does he? Just looks like a normal guy. Sheffield was the place in the First World War. The munitions industry, everybody was employed, making lots of money, making tanks and shells and guns, etc. But deprivation came in the early 20s after the war finished in 1918. And this is typical housing in Sheffield. We would call it slums, but it was ordinary housing in the East End of Sheffield. But if you were lucky to have a job, you were coming back from a foundry, for example, with a wage packet in your pocket, you would meet these guys. And they wanted some of your money because extortion was the name of the game. They went around in 3s and 5s. These were the gangs in Sheffield. They didn't have Tommy guns. No. This was the weapon of choice, the poker. Pay up or you'll get a good poker beating. Didn't kill you, but you remember. Or a smack over the head with a life preserver. They carried one of those just on the inside of their trousers, concealed, but you knew about it. And if you still didn't pay up, you get a good razor slashing with a cutthroat. That'd sort you out. There was a man called John Kidney who went to the Royal Hospital on West Street. 54 razor slashes to his body. Police officer there said, "Mr. Kidney, this is a serious offence. Tell us who's done it." "No, not saying anything." Well, I've got to write something in my pocketbook. He says, well, it's ruined me suit. Yeah. And that's all he would say, because you didn't grass on the gangs. Because there was fighting in the streets on a regular basis and the general public got involved. It was gang to gang. But as you know, there is always collateral damage. The other area of profit was gambling, completely illegal in the 20s. This game of pitch and toss. Anybody heard of pitch and toss? A couple of people, yes. Simple game. 3 coins, usually half crowns or pennies. Bet on how they're landing. It's a simple game. You can't lose, can you? The odds are 17,000 to 1 of getting it right. The gangs usually win. And that's where the Mooney gang hung out in Sheffield. Those of you may know the city: West Bar, Gibraltar Street, Shalesmoor, Solly Street, etc. George Mooney lived here at number 23 Snow Hill, just up the road from West Bar Police Station, which is quite handy because he spent a lot of time there being a gang leader. And they used to meet in 2 pubs, the Red House pub down here and the Shakespeare's. That's the Red House pub today, the old photograph as it is today. I've been in a few times, but I can't get a drink there anymore because it's a Chinese supermarket. How things change. That's the last time I went in, just for a quick look around, the man gave me a menu. Upselling, that's what he was doing. I'll never go back and buy Chinese food, but he didn't know I was a potential customer. The other pub was the Shakespeare's, and that's still there today as a pub. In 1925, this photograph was taken of a gang meeting. They were deciding where to have their tossing rings, whether to apprehend people coming from various factories on the way home with pay packets, or whether to go up to Ranmore and Fulwood and break into a few houses. They were planning their nefarious activities. This is the pub today, still there. It's a trendy boozer for the professional people who work in Sheffield, in the city centre, and live there. If you walk in today, that's the back room, and that corner is where the gangs met. It still smells like 1925. I don't think they've given it a lick of paint. Okay, they've taken down the dartboard and they put a few pictures up, etc. The tables still look the same. And if you go upstairs into the top room, it's like walking back in time 100 years ago. As well as the Mooney gang in Sheffield, there was the Cellar Great gang. Now, they were nice people. They'd go out, a bunch of them, for a night out, pick up a cellar grate from somebody's house, excuse me, go into a pub, order drinks, came to paying at the end of the night. Nah, we don't pay. We're the Cellar Grate gang. The landlord might object, so they'd hit him over the head with a cellar grate, throw it over the bar, smash the optics, and then wreck the place. Nice people, the Cellar Grate. There was also the gas tank gang, who met near a big gas receiver at Neep's End. The gas receiver's obviously long gone. These little gangs were peripheral to the main Mooney gang. And then there was the Apache Razor Girls. You didn't mess with these ladies. They'd go out, they'd go out, you know, could do that. They'd go out with a cutthroat razor tucked down the top of their blouse. Well, that's what you need on a night out, isn't it? You never know when you might need it. Now, you didn't mess with these ladies. They were buffer girls and factory workers. And if you notice from the photograph, they all had their same haircut. Their hairstyle was their badge of office, so other gang members could recognize. 1923 to 27, many people were pushed under trains and killed. There were slashings, beatings, razor slashings and drownings in Millhouses Lake, never reported to the police. There were no official deaths in the whole of the 7 years of the Sheffield gang. The gangs ruled the city. And that was the mantra: see all and say nout. Just keep your head down. Pitch and toss became more popular and more lucrative. And these tossing rings, such as this one, it's a 1925 photograph, were where the general public thought they would make their fortune. Just as when we buy a lottery ticket now, we think, oh, 37 million, oh, that'll be me tomorrow. Well, it never is it? That's another shot of a tossing ring. Just shows it could happen anywhere. Group of people, let's have a bet. Played in the billiard halls and pubs in Sheffield, but completely illegal, and the police knew it. And they would tour around the city centre looking for gang members who shouldn't be in pubs. They were banned from pubs. Certainly they were banned from arranging tossing rings. So they moved out of town, up Duke Street, City Road, to a place called Sky Edge. Anybody know Sky Edge? Heard of it? If you're a Sheffielder, you would know. I've had people in my audience who were born in Sky Edge, and they know it like the back of their hand, and in the East End. In Sky Edge, you can see the whole of the city, particularly this area here, which is West Bar Police Station. So they could see the coppers coming up the hill, pick up the money. Gambling officer? No. We were out for a walk in the country. Prove otherwise, and they couldn't. It's said that 500 people at a time were playing pitch and toss on this field at Sky Edge. Very lucrative for the gangs. Every pound gambled, the gang took 4 shillings and 6pence as commission. There's a lot of money flying around. The police were aware, and the government told Hall Dolwood, the chief constable, you've got to smash the gangs, you're not in control. The council's not in control. The police force isn't in control. So they created the Special Duties Squad. 15 hand-picked officers, mainly of Irish descent, big guys, knew how to fight. These were the Special Duties Squad, nicknamed the Flying Squad, because they toured the city at night looking for gambling gangs. These are 2 of the biggest. 6'5", 24 stone, Jack Farrelly and Pat Geraghty. They knew how to fight, they knew how to arrest somebody, and they'd walk into a pub, identify you, smack you over the head with a billy club, probably break your jaw, 3 or 4 ribs broken, maybe your arm, throw you through the window, and cart you off to West Bar Police Station. Then ask your name. Run by Bill Robinson, their sergeant, and Walter Loxley. And their motto was, get your retaliation in first. And many people appeared in front of the courts following that who looked like this. There was a man who changed his name, William Harkness. His solicitor said to the magistrate, Your Honour, my client would like to change his plea from not guilty to attempted suicide, because he knew what the police were going to do to him. Now, this is Pat Geraghty. He was the biggest, the roughest, the toughest police officer. It's said that he could hold 7 tennis balls in one hand. Can you imagine a smack round the ear from him? Now, looking round the room, you can see you're not a bad bunch of people. I am in Bakewell. But you must promise me not to tell Daisy where those tennis balls are. Because every time I go through the door, she says, where are they? This is West Bar Police Station. Anybody been there? A few people, yeah. Well, it's no longer a police station. It's now the Emergency Services and Police Museum, the only one of its kind in the country. Quite unique. And it's quite a place. Great place to take your grandkids, get them to slide down the fireman's pole, try on the helmets, etc. It's just across the road from the Hilton. But the rooms are slightly smaller, not quite as nice. But the rates are lower. And this is these are 3 of the cells there at West Bar, still retained as they were in the 1900s. That's the bed you could get a night's sleep on. Well, maybe. And those are the stocks they used to put you in if you were an unruly prisoner. Apparently, you can't do that anymore. Something to do with human rights. This is a man who spent his last days in that very cell. Anybody know him? No. If you're a Sheffield, you'd know this man is Charlie Peace, well-known Victoria criminal, #1 wanted man. What a character. Born in Darnley, Sheffield, shot a police officer in London dead, came up to Manchester, shot another man. came to Sheffield chasing the landlady of the Banner Cross Hotel on Ecclesall Road. Landlord didn't think it was a good idea, but Charlie Peace shot him dead as well. His Wikipedia entry says petty crook, entertainer, burglar, and womanizer. Well, ladies, there's no accounting for taste. So this is George Mooney, an Irish bookie, and his own crest. Those of you know Ireland may know that county Offaly is King's County. Everybody has a crest in Offaly, and this is George's. He had the gift of the gab. Got him together, a gang round him. He said, "Look, we can make some money here in Sheffield," and that's what he did. Originally a bookie, but decided that maybe other games, other gambling was where the money was. And his sidekick, this man, Sam Garvin, not a nice man. The thug in the hat is what he was nicknamed. He reckoned the more violence we have, the more money we make, George. George Mooney disagreed. The two of them parted. And for the next 7 years, they fought, the Mooney gang and the Park Brigade, over territory and membership. And unfortunately, the general public got involved. And there were collateral damage. Now, I said I was from Manchester, so I know nothing about football, obviously. But on the 25th of April 1925, one of the two Sheffield, in fact, I was corrected the day before yesterday, there are 4 football clubs in Sheffield. But one of the 2 major football clubs, Sheffield United, were playing in the Cup. They played Cardiff City. That was the programme. 6pence it was. And this was a photograph of some of the crowd. Wouldn't you love to be a flat cap salesman at Wembley? You'd have made a fortune. The first half was nothing to talk about. And the second half, Fred Tunstall scored the winning goal. And Sheffield United won the Cup. I like to remind them that it's 101 years since they won the FA Cup. And when I did a talk to Sheffield Blades, called Senior Blades Group, I was thinking, this is a bit awkward. There's 150 people in this room. Am I going to get killed or mobbed at the end of? But it was okay. I got away. So they came back from Wembley, and the whole of the city was celebrating, and a few drinks had been taken, I guess, by most of the Sheffield congregation. They came through the city as a victory parade and presented the cup to the Lord Mayor on the balcony. They then went to this place. Anybody know this building? Royal Victoria Hotel. Still one of the best buildings in Sheffield, both inside and out. A listed building, privately owned still, which is good. And they had a slap-up meal, and a few more drinks were taken, and the whole of the city was celebrating. But not everybody, because the Park Brigade were out to settle a fight and even the score. One of their quite prominent gang members was in a pub and he insulted a young lady. A member of the general public called him out and said, "Hey, you can't do that. Let's get out here." So they went into the street and they had a fair fight, 1-1. And this man beat the gang member, supposedly the toughest guy. Fair fight. They were out to find him. And this is the police photograph that identified the Park Brigade that night. And this was the man they were after, Jock Plummer, ex-Scots Guards, lived in Sheffield, had a job in a foundry, 2 infant children. And they knocked on his door on Princess Street. Princess Street is still there today. He lived at number 42. And that's his house. I took the photograph about a year ago. Still there today. I don't know whether anybody lives there. I don't think anybody. Come on, Plummer, get out of here. You want to sort this out. So Jock Plummer, good street fighter. Right, he says, who's first? Oh, no. Oh, no. They didn't think that 1-1 was fair. They thought 10-1 were better odds. So they set on him with pokers and chains and razors, 10 of them. Beat him up. And they stabbed him in the stomach with a Sanderson bayonet. Ironically made in Sheffield, the best bayonet of the First World War. He was in a bad way, bleeding profusely. First man on scene called by the neighbours was this policeman, Danny Hogan. And Danny Hogan thought, right, I'll sort this out. Now, in 1920, medical training wasn't that good for the police. So Danny Hogan thought, I'll take him to the Rawson's Arms, the pub on the corner. Give him a few brandies, that'll stop the bleeding. It didn't, as we all. So they called for a police car, one of the three in Sheffield at the time, and they took him to this place, the Royal Infirmary on Infirmary Road, where he received proper medical attention. But he died 3 hours later. We now have a murder on our hands. The police knew about it because they're physically there. Now, if you and I were in a fight like that and involved, we want to get away. But not these two young lads, the Fowler brothers. They said, no, we'll stop here, we'll have a fish supper. And when the police arrived en masse, they were eating fish and chips on the corner of Princess Street. He was one of them, and him, said the crowd. They were both arrested. But Sam Garvin was a bit more clever than that. He decided that he needed an alibi. And with his second in command, Frederick Goddard, another nasty man, he decided to jump on a tram in the Wicker Arches and go into town to Division Street. And the first thing they did when they got off the tram on Division Street was to attack a police officer. Oh, perfect alibi. We were nowhere near that fight in the East End. We were in town. Look, we've attacked a copper. Become arrested. Well, the alibi soon fell apart when the crowd down on Princess Street said Garvin and Goddard were there and they were involved in the fight. So they were rearrested. This is where Jock Plummer is buried. Burngreave Cemetery. I don't know if anybody's ever been there. It's a lovely cemetery. Makes City Road look a bit boring, to be honest. It's like a town. I was looking for one grave. Jock Plummer's. There's 19,600 graves in Burngreave Cemetery. I thought, oh, I shouldn't have come here. This is crazy. But I stopped the man walking his dog and I said, look, I'm looking for the... Oh, you need to speak to Christine. Do I? Gave me a phone number. Rang Christine. Oh, yes. She said, oh, yeah. I'll be with you in 5 minutes. And she came along, took me straight to the grave. Luckily. It's now 101 years since Jock Plummer was murdered, stabbed to death on Princess Street. His family came over last year on the 100th anniversary from Ottawa in Canada. And they erected this plaque on the wall. It's not a pretty thing, but it infers that he was a fighter to the end. And that's the very spot that Jock Plummer died. I took the photograph. It's there. Otherwise, you drive past it, you wouldn't know what it was all about. Now, the 10 members of the Park Brigade were due to appear at Leeds Assizes in July that year for the willful murder of Jock Plummer. 10 people for one murder. Doesn't happen anymore. Law has changed. We have double jeopardy, we have joint enterprise, etc. And I think the law will change again with the new Police Reform Act that was put before Parliament in January this year. And they were held in this place. Anybody know this building? Have a guess? No, it's Armley Road in Leeds. Been in there. Not the nicest of prisons on the inside. It's quite pretty. It's a listed building on the outside. I did a talk to a Probus Club in, I think it was Penistone. And one of the members said, oh yeah, Armley Road, that I was there for 3 months. Yeah. And then he realised what he'd said. He quickly said, I'm an electrical contractor. We were working there. I don't know whether it was true or not. That's Leeds Assizes, where the trial was held. Sheffield didn't have an Assizes. Sheffield was a little town in those days. Leeds was the place. And they were tried in front of an impartial jury, apparently. Sam Garvin and Frederick Goddard, the leaders, were expected to go to prison. They were definitely part of the team who killed Jock Plummer. In actual fact, Six of the other members of their gang were jailed for between 7 and 10 years for the willful murder of Jock Plummer. Sam Garvey knew a lot of people. He knew councillors, judiciary, the police, businessmen in Leeds. He was acquitted within 7 minutes of jury. Was that a coincidence? Not possibly so. However, the government insisted that somebody has to pay for this murder to show the general public that they were doing something about the Sheffield gangs. And the Fowler brothers were both found guilty of Jock's murder and sentenced to death. He met this man. Anybody know him? Nice house, nice car, lovely wife, nice dog. Albert Pierpoint, correct. The hangman, the longest serving hangman in the UK. A professional. By looking through that slot in the cell door at Armley Road, he knew it would take an 8-foot 2-inch drop to break the 3rd and 4th vertebrae, and they would be dead within 8 seconds of that trapdoor open. He was meticulous. He was a professional. He kept a meticulous record of everybody he hung, where they were born, what their trade or profession was, height, weight, everything. But as you can appreciate, hanging people is not a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week job. He had another business. He had a pub in Oldham, Hollins End, and it was called Help the Poor Struggler. Interesting name for a pub. But he was the genial host, and people used to travel for miles to go and shake hands with Albert Pierpoint. In fact, there was somebody in the audience on Thursday last week who said his father used to go and shake hands with Albert Pierpoint, and my Uncle Joe, who liked to drink or two, he used to go up there and he used to say to my dad when he came, "Oh, I've been up to see Pierpoint again." And my dad wasn't interested really. "Have you? Is he all right?" "Oh, we're good pals, you know." I had a long chat to him, you know. But that doesn't buy drink. And that's how he earns his money. And in actual fact, Pierpoint had a beer named after him. It was called Pierpoint's Last Drop Ale. And as I said, you had to buy drinks, etc., to make him some money. So he had to put a sign up over the bar. And apparently, after 12 months, he was asked to take it down. Some people have no sense of humour. So back to Army Road now. And the Fowler brothers. They were hung on the 3rd and the 4th of September, 1925. Nothing in any of the records, in any of the books, police archives, shows that they struck the blow to kill Jock Plummer. The word got round after the arrest, the murder, and the trial, and the hanging. And a gang membership dropped completely. Mooney and Garvin continued their terror in Sheffield, and the flying squad continued, but only using moderate force. They'd only break 3 ribs when they arrested you. The enforcers, Walter Loxley and Bill Robinson, continued, later to be joined by this man. You may have heard the name, Percy Sillito. A lot of people think he was a gang member. He wasn't. And there is a police society called the Sillito Society in Sheffield, which is there so everybody remembers Percy Sillito. But there was another gang. Anybody recognise these characters? These gang members. The man on the left, Austin Chamberlain. The man in the middle, Stanley Baldwin. And, as you well know, Winston Churchill, Chancellor of the Exchequer, the man on the right. They wanted the gangs to continue as a secondary police force because they had another concern, the Communist Party, the Red Menace. They told Hall Darwood that this would happen. He was a straight, upright, moral guy, 15 years chief constable, but he was forced out of office because he wouldn't agree with them. Was there corruption in the government? Does that ever happen? No. On the 1st of May 1926, this man, Percy Sillitoe, was elected Chief Constable of Sheffield. Previously Chief Constable of Chesterfield and Chief Constable Devon and Cornwall. There were 58 applicants for the job, many better qualified than Sillitoe, but the government wanted him in as their man. He's an interesting character. 14 years of age, he was a choir boy at St Paul's in London. Joined the Army Reservists, was posted to Rhodesia and South Africa, where he learnt his trade in using violence to beat up the tribal gangs and break them up. That's him with his aunt in South Africa in 1920. As soon as he was elected Chief Constable of Sheffield, a general strike happened. And the communist threat was literally on the streets. Police and the army were on the streets to combat the riots they expected to happen. They never did. It petered out on the 12th of May. And Percy Sillitoe regained his position as Chief Constable, and his job was to clean up Sheffield's Shalesmoor Quarter, but only using moderate force. I believe he was one of the most influential police officers of the 20th century. He brought police boxes and police radios into Sheffield from the idea was American. First one went in Rotherham and then into Sheffield. The forensic division using fingerprint recognition, never been done before. Sillitoe brought it into the police force. 120 police boxes. First drink tests. Forensic division. And would you believe women police officers? How does that work? The first 3 were in Retford, and then the second 3 were in Sheffield. And the sports facilities at Niagara, which still exist today for the families and the officers. He also created the Sillitoe tartan. Now you're all thinking, Sillitoe tartan. If you're in a riot, you hit a man with a hat like this, he'll be the rioter. You do not hit a man with a hat like that. And that checkered band was created in 1926 in Sheffield. It's now on every police officer's uniform, every emergency services vehicle in Europe. Created in 1926 by Percy Sillitoe. He also created the Sillitoe Cossacks, the mounted division we take for granted now at football matches for crowd control. And more importantly, he gave elocution training to these mainly illiterate Irish descent police officers. Great at arresting people, beating them up, throwing them in a cell, not so good at presenting their evidence in court. And now convictions started to rise. They could write their reports, etc. The remainder of the gangs were smashed. Certainly, moving on, they moved on to other areas. And Percy was moved on by the government. His job in Sheffield now complete. He took with him Bertie Hammond, his fingerprint expert, and he went to Glasgow to try and smash the Glasgow razor gangs who were terrorising the city with their trendy names, the Southside Strikers, the Billy Boys and the Norman Conks. The latter 2 exist still today in Glasgow in the form of Glasgow Rangers and Celtic supporters. Glasgow's still a religiously divided city, as is Belfast. That's what the press said about the Glasgow razor gangs. They go into a shop, strip it bare, not pay for anything, and disappear. But they didn't mess around with pokers. This was their weapon of choice, the pickaxe handle. And every gang member would carry one of these, slip down his trouser leg. So if you saw one walking down the street, you'd notice that he was a gang member. They used to throw these or beat you over the head with them. Quite a weapon. Now, if you want one of these, they're £4.99 from Wickes. And when I bought this one about a year ago, the young lad behind the counter said, "Do you want the rest of the pickaxe?" I said, "No, this is just enough what I need." He looked at me. I looked at him. Nothing was said. And then he said, "Is it cash or card, sir?" These are the Brigton boys. 800 gang members. Now they look like a public school outing, don't they? Nice shiny shoes, collar and ties, three-piece suits, and the caps. In the neb of the cap was sewn in razor blades. In a fight, that was your weapon. And you would get what's known as the Glasgow smile, slashed from ear to ear, sometimes on both sides. This is a man identified by his Glasgow smile, attacked in London, beginning of the Second World War. Anybody know him? William Joyce, otherwise known as Lord Haw Haw. Another interesting character. Born in New York State of Irish parentage, hated the English, came over to live in County Galway in Ireland, hated the English even more when he saw what the black and tans were doing to the country. And he decided, when he got a call from Mr. Goebbels, to go and join them over in Germany. And his call sign, Germany calling, was heard, it said, by 10 million radio listeners in 1940, trying to convince the English to give in. He too met Albert Pierpoint. Pierpoint hung 530 men in his life. 20 women, including Ruth Ellis, the last one to be hung in the UK. 226 Nazi war criminals at the Nuremberg trials. 12 in one afternoon. It was a part-time job, this, but he got £485 for everyone he hung. Those of you who did maths at school will work out it's about £6,400 part-time job in 1946. Not bad. And when he was hung in January, it said, this is Wandsworth Prison, it said there were 500 people waiting for the proclamation to be issued outside the gate to say that the traitor was dead. We don't use that rope anymore. Hanging was abolished. 1969, eventually, when the act was fully passed. And these were two of the last people to be hung in the UK in 1964. Gwyn Evans and Pete Allen. Nasty people. I believe they deserve to be hung. They bludgeoned a taxi driver to death for 10 shillings. And it's said that in the car waiting 2 blocks away was Peter Allen's 2 infant children and his wife. Wow. So, back to the gangs in Sheffield. Sillitoe then moved on after Glasgow to assist J. Edgar Hoover in Chicago to try and beat, unsuccessfully, the Chicago gangs. He then came back to the UK and created the Flying Squad, using his expertise from Sheffield and from South Africa. But after a while, working for the government wasn't really what he wanted to do. The paperwork got to him, and he retired in 1946. He bought a sweet shop in Eastbourne. Wow. From one extreme to the other. He got a little bit bored with the sweet shop, as you and I would. And these people came knocking on his door. "We're from MI5, Mr. Sillitoe. We believe you're good at infiltrating gangs and criminals. We've got some serious problems. Why don't you come and work for us and be our Director General?" And that's exactly what he did. Director General of MI5. And before he retired, or as he retired, he wrote this book, Bloke Without Dagger, which is another book that tells the story of the Sheffield gangs and how the police force broke. When he retired from MI5, he then went to work back in South Africa for De Beers Mining Corporation, combating diamond smuggling. And he did something which nobody would really want to be proud of. He formed the South African Secret Police, which are a very nasty lot. Sam Garvin was now a bare-knuckle fight promoter. betting illegally on the fights. And he had a magical immunity from prosecution. Arrested 34 times in his life, but only served 2 short jail sentences. But he knew he had to get rid of George Mooney, the other gang member of the Mooney gang. And he called on George's house. This is it on Snow Hill. Still there today. That is it. And he said, "Happy Christmas, George. I've got some friends who want to help you here." They beat him up, threatened his wife and his children. George wasn't a violent man, and he fled 16 days later from Sheffield, as he was instructed to by Garvin. He went to Lincoln. And he became a justice of the peace. Would you believe? I don't know what the application form said. It probably said gang member, tick box A or B. You know, when you fill in a form and sometimes you forget them. He got a bit bored with that. And 2 years later, going straight wasn't for George. He came back to Sheffield as a bookie, called Big George Barrett. He changed his name, thinking nobody will recognise me. I'm a 6'5" Irishman. No. Sam Garvin had changed his name as well. He was now called Captain George Mee. New life as a fight promoter. And he acquired a new council house. How did he do that? This is his new house at Heavygate Avenue in Walkley. The first council houses built in that area in 1930. And he parks his 4-litre Bentley in the drive. He was doing all right. Crime does pay. That's the property he left behind. Still there today. So that was the background. 1923 to 29. Supported by the other gang. 1929, 24 policemen were suspended and later fired for creating immunity and corruption and bribery. Does that ever happen these days? Oh, I don't think so. Maybe that slide's wrong. I saw this cartoon just after Christmas.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow. And all the shenanigans from Mr. Mandelson and Nicola Sturgeon, etc. As it goes on and on and on, it's not really a joke anymore. It's actually happening. There are 5,000 organised crime gangs in the UK. But they're not Irish anymore or Italian. And they're not into gambling because it's illegal. It's legal. And they're not into alcohol. They're into cybercrime, smuggling, human trafficking, etc. And the biggest growth area for crime, organised crime in the UK today, is illegal vapes and tobacco. You can earn £80,000 a year profit from a little corner shop selling illegal tobacco and vapes. Car washes, fly tipping, etc. The police set up Operation Fortify in 2018 to combat the gangs in this area. And that's where the gangs are. They know where they are, they've located them, they know who they are, they've just got to get enough evidence. Mexborough, anybody know Mexborough, is the centre of organised crime in South Yorkshire. Yes. But they're not run by the Irish anymore. They're run by the Albanians, the Romanians, the Palestinians, Pakistanis, etc. They've come into England through the Schengen Agreement the last 25 years and thought, oh, this is a good place to set up our business. That's what's happened. In Sheffield, there were 24 lethal shootings last year. There were 137 in Brussels. Let's get it in perspective. And all these gangs have got their trendy names, the Darnell crew, the Pitsmore Shotter Boys. It's the thing to be a gang member in some of those areas in Sheffield at the moment. This is the Pitsmore Shotter Boys. They're from Mexborough. This is a family business and a family. And you look at the 2 I've ringed, they look like 14-year-old schoolboys, don't they? Because they are 14-year-old schoolboys. They shared 135 years of jail time in 2019. Many of them now have been released back into the community. It's happening all the time. I did talk at a residential care home in Sheffield, a new one opening. The lady, one of the assistant managers, she said, "Oh, I live in Mexborough. Oh, Pittsburgh, shut up. Oh, we all know them. We wave to them as they drive. Everybody knows who they are." Now, I guess nobody knows this guy. This is Sean Hercules. He's a ladies' hairdresser from Barnsley. He reckoned there's more money in drugs than ladies' hairdressing. So he set up a deal where he went across to Spain. The South Yorkshire police knew about it. The Spanish police knew about it. And as we can see, they all carry a sidearm. And they decided to raid the hotel where the deal was going through. And they have their own solution in Spain. There was a fight, there was a car chase, and they shot him 19 times. He died. That's the solution over there. Don't believe in probation orders, conditional discharges, 2 months in prison. It doesn't work for these people. As I close, let me talk about the gang war film. We had expressions of interest from a few people in 2007. 2 or 3 of these people are no longer with us. And they said to me, "Martin, you can be our location planner," because it's obvious you can't dance, you can't sing, you can't act, which is all true. I was their location planner, and these were the places I was finding. And these places are still there in Sheffield today. These buildings. You don't need to build a film set, it's already there. Amazing places. How long for? Will the university come along and say, "Oh, let's knock it all down, build a new faculty"? Quite right. But really, these traditional buildings should be maintained. Now, I just happened to be in Krakow as we were putting this film package together. I was driving through an industrial estate and saw this building. And I said to our driver, "Excuse me, is that the Schindler building?" "Oh," he says, "yeah, it's something to do with the war. 21-year-old, different generation." He pointed to the plaque that had just been put on the wall. It's a World Heritage Site. We went round the whole factory. One of the security guards took us round. These are the Schindler factories where Oskar Schindler protected 1,300 Jewish workers from the Nazis. We're 8 kilometers from Auschwitz up the road, up the railway track. That building now has been transformed into probably the biggest visited museum in the whole of Krakow, if not in Poland. An amazing building, all from public money. Krakow Authority, the government in Poland, and World Heritage money. As you walk round, you see every single Jewish worker's photograph on the wall. The Nazis kept meticulous records. But will that ever happen in Sheffield? Will all these little masters buildings and little workshops and places like that that are Sheffield's heritage disappear? Yes, I guess they will. This is Solly Street today. Chinese halls of residence for Chinese students funded by Chinese money. Progress. Now, our plan was to build a film, 3-part television series, and our market was worldwide. But then what happened? You may remember in 2007, 2008, we had a world recession. Banks fell apart. Companies and governments were teetering on the brink. And all our investors walked away. We'll give you a call. We'll be in touch. They have never been. But we did have plan B. And thanks to this man on the left, and you like him or loathe him, he did a massive amount of good for the British film industry. He got together with David Putnam, a well-known film producer, and they created what's known as Section 48 relief. This was the deal. Mr. Investor, don't put your money in the stock market. Doing this, 2008 was a very scary time. If you put your money in the British film industry, for every £100,000 you put in, we, the government, will promise you £130,000 in 10 months' time. Now, you can believe us, we're politicians. Well, as we all know, prime ministers don't last forever. And Tony Blair went. to be replaced by this man, Mr. Brown. Bit of bad news here. First of all, he was the Chancellor, and he knew where all the money was going. Secondly, he's a Scotsman. Doesn't like giving it away. So he instructed HMRC to claw back all that tax and rebates he'd given to hundreds of thousands of investors. Wow. Greed, treachery, theft and corruption. That was everywhere. But can a government department do this? You ever heard of a government department doing it? And the question is, can you trust every politician? I showed this slide in Barnsley about 3 years ago. One lady stood up and said, only if their mouth is closed. And you have to admit, you might be right. Now, in closing, let's have a look at who believed Tony Blair. Alex Ferguson put £4.8 million into film schemes. David Beckham, 2.4 million. Terry Wogan, £3 million. Michael Parkinson, just over £1 million. And me, I put money into film schemes. I got my rebate. I had to pay it all. And this was the film you probably remember, made in Sheffield, The Full Monty. 2.6 million. Peanuts in the film industry. The average film now is 120 million. It's made £275 million so far. That's not a bad investment. Rostov, 87 million so far. Billy Elliot, 58 million so far, apart from the stage show. If Gang Wars film is ever made, it'll cost about 12.5. Still a budget film. We don't know whether it will ever happen. Little Chicago story is there. And it's going to be told. We still haven't got anybody who says, let's go ahead and produce them. Because we're now in a different era. We're into a streaming area now. I've been to cinemas to see films just after Christmas this year. 250 seats of cinema in Chesterfield, 6 people in, including me. How do they make money? Nobody's going there and eating popcorn anymore. They're all streaming it at home. It's a different market. Amazon, Disney, Netflix, the lot. So we had interest shown. There's new appetite for gang crime. There are 38 crime-related series on 4 terrestrial channels and television this week. We are mesmerised by crime. And Peaky Blinders has been very good. Now, looking around the room, it looks like a few dodgy people here. I know 1 or 2 of you might want a new career. And I work with the probation service and Derbyshire Police on a number of projects. I can introduce you to some very dubious people. Just let me know. In fact, I've got a photograph of one of them. Difficult to get hold of him, though, at the moment. If you've enjoyed the presentation, please tell your friends. If you're a member of another club or association, take one of my leaflets of all my 16 talks there. Take a card, etc. That's my leaflet. And if you haven't enjoyed this evening, I'm sorry. You've just lost an hour of your life. And I can't do anything about it. Thank you for your time and listening. I'm quite happy to take questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Martin, for introducing a very serious subject, but with an edge, and not all the questions were rhetorical, I don't think. Right, any questions, members of the audience? I'm not asking about applications for his gang. No? Yeah, they're flabbergasted.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah. Filled with all the information that they never knew they didn't know.
Well, that's it. I mean, if you were a Sheffielder, you would have lots of questions because you will probably have contacts and relatives, etc. And
So, yeah,
this gentleman.
if it,
Adrian.
the situation in Sheffield sounds similar, read Peaky Blinders, to the situation in Birmingham in the 20s. What was going on? You know, why was it, do you think, that this sort of breakdown in law and order and this sort of amount of criminality was carrying on? Was it? It seems to be there was a window of something happening in society. What on earth does
Well, the Birmingham gangs were prominent in the early 30s. The gang with Sheffield had been broken by 1928, 29. They just carried on, but it's all about money and power. That's the story. It's throughout the world. You see what's happening in all the conflicts in the world. It's all about money, assets, power, resources. That's what drives it. And organised crime is all about getting to that money and power illegally. And it's the same, absolutely the same today. The police cannot handle the gangs at the moment. They're powerless. They haven't got enough officers. The legislation doesn't help them. It's starting to help them now. The government is now starting to bring in new acts that give them more power. But in the 20s, it wasn't the place. And in Birmingham in the 30s, running up to the Second World War, it was the same situation. The gangs had the power. The Peaky Blinders were very nasty people, and they control the city. And in Liverpool, Manchester had the Quality Street gangs. Every era has its own gang warfare, controlling. And it's all about money. They don't do it for any other reason. Easy money.
So the reality is this has been true forever.
For thousands of years, there were gangs in Greece and in the Roman Empire. These breakaway gangs who knew that violence could influence people, and that's what happens. It's a sad part of our culture.
Well, that's a sobering note for those journeying home tonight. Are there any more questions?